The Property Lane.
Welcome to Property Lane, where it's everything real estate. Once again, we are here at Fairway Hotel, and we are continuing with the topic on architecture in Uganda. I'm sure you still want to hear more about that. And for those who are just joining us for the first time, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Catherine Nanteza, and I am your host tonight. And with me is Mr.
I'm called Mark Wambale.
Yeah.
I'm an architect by profession and a member of the Uganda Society of Architects. Good evening, viewers, and thank you, Catherine, for inviting me here once again.
Yes, and the lady architect. We wanted to show you that there are also ladies doing architecture.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kathy. My name is Namayanja Jacqueline. I'm an architect as well, and I'm also the Vice President of the Uganda Society of Architects. Thank you, Kathy, for inviting us.
You're welcome. Last time we broke off at a very interesting note, where we were talking of why do we have the same buildings, and the question was, do we need to have different buildings, or we need beautiful buildings? And architect Mark was telling us something interesting of you don't need to have different buildings, right? But they just have to be a culture of that area. Could you elaborate more on that? What do you mean exactly?
Well, as I was saying the last time, architecture has eras and styles, or places can have the language. I think you had also asked about, do we have a language for Uganda?
Okay.
And maybe we have, but probably that is what you don't like. And like I mentioned last time, it's probably because of the way the field is operating, the fact that a lot of work is not done by professionals. I think what matters is that if you have good architecture, it can actually be multiplied to form an urban environment or a streetscape or a zone. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with buildings looking the same. I think what matters is that the whole assembly of those buildings and the execution of those buildings needs to be nice. I'm sure you have gone to estates and you like them.
Yeah.
You have seen estates by Centum. You have seen an estate by Royal Palms. You have seen an estate by NSSF. Is there anything wrong with buildings looking the same? I don't think so. So I think it's an issue beyond just the building, but how the buildings are being done, how the streetscapes are regulated or planned. So it's a bigger chaos than just...
Actually, you bring in the streetscapes. I think it's not the buildings looking alike, but also it's a planning issue. Because if you went, say, to Royal Palms, the streets are clearly marked, the houses and everything.
Yeah.
There's a playground for children, there's this, that. And then you come out of that whole setting, and right in Luzira itself, you find one house facing this way, another one facing that way. As of Entebbe Road, leave the street side, but right behind it, you will find plot sizes as small as 30 by 40, 50 by 70, and one's toilet is looking into another's sitting room. What causes that, Jackie? And architects working with planners. We want a well-planned, organized city.
We all do. We all do. And yes, among architects, there's also what they call urban architecture. We have physical planners, we have urban planners. And ideally, on top of all of that, then we have the government. Right. So it's a good thing for all of us to come together, plus the government, because the government will be, in the first place, the one that has the greater mandate on how we can execute. Then us as the urban architects and the physical planners or urban planners will come in to then plan out the vision. But the government has to back it up. It has to provide the area. You can call that a planning area, but if it's not going to be backed up or facilitated by the government, how are you going to move forward? The most we can do, and I think as we have tried from our side of the society and also ARB, is to try to try getting into collaborations and talks with the government, where we try to highlight these issues.
Okay.
We bring them forth. And I think KCCA has also worked out plans. They have a department where they have worked out urban planning areas. They have come up with designs, but they just haven't yet been executed. Now, at that point, we don't know what is happening in the background there.
Who executes those plans? Who is supposed to follow the plan? Architect Mark, from your experience, where is the confusion coming from?
Before you talk about a building, you must talk about the community in which that building is being set up. So we have planning law before you come to construction law. Every building must be subjected to a planning approval before it goes to a building approval. So we have the Physical Planning Act, which regulates now the planning issues, and the Building Control Act, which regulates the actual building design and construction issues. Before that, there was Town and Country Planning Act and the Public Health Act, which had the building rules. So the Town and Country Planning Act was replaced by the Physical Planning Act in 2010, and the building rules were more or less those aspects of construction under the Public Health Act were, I would say, replaced by the Building Control Act, which was passed in 2013 but only commenced in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a much newer law in practice. So the Physical Planning Act says the whole of Uganda is a planning area, and therefore it must be planned. And I'm sure we already have the National Physical Development Plan.
Yes. Now,
under a national physical, the lower level, the next level is what they call a Regional Physical Development Plan, which covers more than one district. Then we have a District Physical Development Plan, Urban Physical Development Plan for cities, municipalities, towns. And then we have a Sub-County Physical Development Plan. Before it was called Local Physical Development Plan, until the Act had some sections amended. So you can plan a sub-county. That's like the smallest regulated area. That's the lowest physical plan.
Is that different from the detailed plan?
Now, then those things like detailed plans and area action plans now cover probably smaller areas. So while I was at KCCA, we commenced the preparation of in-house, more or less, detailed plans for some parts of the city. There was Kololo, Nakasero, Molago, and Makerere. Under the Kampala Physical Development Plan of 2012-2013, those were referred to as neighborhoods. So they are called neighborhood plans, but they are also detailed plans. The approval process of those plans is still ongoing. I'm told the team is finalizing them and they will present them for approval soon. Now, in those plans, for instance, if you went to Kololo, you will know, because we know Kololo has residences, it has bars, it has offices, so you will know in which part of Kololo you can do residence.
But do they? Because I see these days bars are popping up and restaurants.
Of course, there is no
detailed
plan, but what I'm telling you is that in that detailed plan, you will know where you can have single-family residence, if at all. You will know where you can have apartments. You will know where you can mix apartments and offices, and you will know where you can have shops. So it tells you street by street or zone by zone what can be around there, and it also tells you how much of the plot you can cover with your building, how far you should be from the street, how tall you can go. And so, like I was saying before, in the end you will have at least the streetscape regulated. The style, the language of the building may be different, but at least if you are all 6 meters away from the street, and you are all between 6 and 10 floors, there is a sense of uniformity which will already come out of that. Even if someone uses brick and another one uses stone and another one uses paint, at least you will have created some sense of order in the public space. So those are the levels of planning before you now go into the individual buildings, which now at planning, what is regulated are the is the public interest. What's the interest of what's the vision of the city? How many people should we accommodate in Kampala? That's how you determine the volume of buildings. You get me? What should this streetscape look like? Should it look like a narrow corridor, or should it feel wide? Do we want trees? So those public space issues and interests are what planning regulates. Then the construction law, the Building Control Act now, is caring about the occupants of the building.
Oh, not the building itself, but the ones who are going to use it.
So why should the building be stable? Because it should not collapse on me when I'm inside and I die. Why must it have windows? Because I need fresh air and I need light. So it is the interests of the users that the Building Control Act looks out for. That's why it tells you concrete must be like this. The size of the room must be X. The volume per person must be this, so that I have enough air. So that is the difference between the...
Does it get into the nitty-gritties, the details of like now you're talking of the concrete mixture must be this?
Yes. So the Act gives you the general principles. It sets up the building control, the building committee. It sets up the board, the National Building Review Board. You have heard of it.
Yes.
And then it has regulations which tell you how much you pay when you are submitting plans, who sits on the committee, how the committee should take decisions. And then you have what we call the building code. The building code now tells you if you are saying this is a room where people will live, what they call a habitable room, this shall be the minimum size. And this shall be the minimum area per person. In other words, you don't say that because they say the bedroom should be at least 15 square meters, whether I have 5 people sleeping in it or 1 person, that is what I will use. They go ahead to tell you the area per person, so that if you have more people, then it will be bigger. They will tell you the minimum size of openings for ventilation that should be there per square meter of room. All that is meant to achieve a minimum level of comfort. And then you also have this. Now the building code is divided into different volumes. There is what we call the building standards that mainly regulates architectural design. There is the structural design standards, which is now about the strength of the structure.
Okay.
We have the standards for mechanical installations, standards for electrical installations, and accessibility standards. Now those are the ones catering for people with disabilities. So it is a multiple volume document, and it's mentioned in the Building Control Act that there shall be a code known as the National Building Code. So those are just like chapters.
I can't believe we're already in our break. When we come back, Jackie, please tell us, where does an architect fit into the real estate chain? I mean, Mark is telling me all these things, and I know there are many out there who are saying, you mean this is in the law, like we are supposed to know how many people live in a certain
That's where
space,
the architect comes in.
you know? When we come back, we will tell you where the architect fits into the real estate chain. Welcome back, my viewers. We are still discussing architecture and having interesting conversations here. Jackie, where does the architect come in terms of real estate? Because if I could make it simple for you, we have been told that real estate is land and everything above it, improvements on it that are permanent, under or above it.
So
where do you come in?
Up, down. So let me start by saying that architects are about designing environments.
Okay.
Those environments can be external, internal. I don't know if they go into the air, but maybe at some point.
They
but
should.
internal and external, right?
Yeah.
It is an environment. Mark has broken down almost every professional that is involved. Until he got to the nitty-gritty of the detail where the architect finally came in. I feel like I'm repeating myself because he said it all.
To make it simple,
Yes.
We have, say I have a piece of land, an acre or two, and I want to put up a home, a family home.
Yeah.
Where do I start from?
Okay.
Is that when I go looking for a contractor, or do I come to look for you first? Then you look for the contractor, the engineer, the agent, and everyone else in the value chain. Like,
But now we're
What do I
focusing
do?
on the architect because the question was where the architect comes in. Right?
Yes.
Now,
like basing on that bare land.
yes. So we have a bare land, and Mark has explained to you that that bare land falls within a certain planning zone.
Okay.
Yeah, which has to be identified.
Okay.
Now we have counterparts and colleagues who handle the part of this has been designated for residential, factory, and that. So if you get to that point and decide I'm in the residential zone, having verified that with a responsible authority, then I come in because now we have ascertained what falls in this area. So if it's a home, then you start giving me your vision of the home. If it's an industry, if it's a factory, if it's a hospital, a school, then you start downloading onto me what it is that you're looking for. And so the architect comes in to start what we talked about originally, to start designing and visualizing on your behalf, letting you know this is what we need, this is what we want, this is what you're missing.
Okay.
And then we start the analysis. We have to do feasibility studies, we have to do site analysis, breaking down the whole design process to the final execution. The architect will always run through the life cycle of that building. It's almost impossible to, if the architect has been responsible for visualizing it, bringing those designs out, you need that architect at every stage. Now, the architect will lead the team. The architect will lead the team because even if you get a structural engineer, let me just put it like this. The structural engineer will not design what is not there. I have to give you something to consider, right?
Okay.
And say, okay, so now this is how the structure will work. And then you work with a structural engineer. Even if it's an interior designer, they will not work without a shell. Even if it's a mechanical engineer, they will not work without the shell. You need to give them the framework.
Who does the approvals for, if it's in Kampala, in KCCA, who is responsible? Because most times I have the money, I don't want to know the headache around it. I've given you my house, I want you to build it. Who's going to go through all the approvals? Why do we find that at some point there's a church next to a lodge and a bar next to a school?
Because the public does not know the law. The public, like you had, it's the first time you've heard about this breakdown.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
it is, and it's exciting.
I think for anything to be successful in this planning, urban planning situation, both sides have to be knowledgeable about what's going on. The public has to know that this is not allowed, this has to be like that. There has to be some sort of enforcement, but also some sort of sensitization. Right? I'll let Mark take over since he's more in that department. Right.
Mark, who is supposed to be responsible if my building is in the wrong place, or if my building is with the wrong neighbor in that whole chain?
Like I said, planning is about the public interest.
Okay.
And it is the planning function, which is the duty of the local authority to determine what should be where.
Okay.
Because that's the public interest. Why should noise come to my neighborhood? So those are the public interests, neighborhood issues. So the planning authority is supposed to determine what should be acceptable where and under what conditions. Because it does not necessarily mean that if you say this is a residential zone, I can't have a church there. Okay. Why should I drive kilometers to go to church? Okay. A church could be in my neighborhood, but then the conditions will be that you are not going to make noise beyond this level of noise, and or this level of noise can only be made between this time and this time. And at night, if you want to pray, maybe you should have soundproofing, and the people who are sleeping shouldn't hear you. So it is those kind of regulations that are needed. Unfortunately, our planning system has been dysfunctional to a high degree. And I'm speaking from experience. It's good now that I see a lot of planning work going on around the country, and I think slowly by slowly that is being solved. But the challenge has been that no one could authoritatively tell you with a document that this is what you can do here. Okay. And so it has always been a negotiation, and in the end, many wrong things have happened. Yeah.
Is there a possibility of correcting the mistakes? So we will have to shift the city and go start planning another city.
No, I always tell people that planning You see, planning is a vision for a community, and it's not a one-day thing. For us, we design a building, and in 1 year it's built, and people are living in it. But when you are planning, I'm told the street network we see for New York, those big blocks, Broadway, those are things of 17 something. So planning is about that future of the.
We need prophetic.
So even if we think that we
need to see a couple of years ahead.
So even the Kampala you think is not okay, you can say by 2040 or 2050 this is what is going to happen. Because today there are almost every site in Kampala today is happening by demolishing what was there before. So in another 20 years there will be another phase of demolition. So you can say today what you want a certain part of Kampala to be, because you are thinking about the future of the nation. So there are plans that are for 25 years. The smaller the detailed plans are probably 5 years. You know, so it's like saying we have vision 2040. Okay. So when you also have a plan for Kampala, it can also be a plan of 2040. And then these smaller plans are a way of achieving that longer vision. So it's not all lost, but definitely it takes long to change planning problem.
What's an approved plan? And maybe how does it
plan
look like?
Means that the professionals have prepared it and it has been submitted to the local authority in accordance with the laws. The local authorities have looked at it and satisfied themselves that it meets the minimum requirements specified in the law, and they have accepted it for construction. And those days they would just say the approved plan, but today they issue what they call a building permit. Yes. So that is what an approved plan is. The one that has been accepted by the local authority, that's the city council, municipal council, whatever, and said this is okay, you can go ahead and build it.
Are people really following the approved plan in construction as an architect?
The approved plan, yes. Majority do.
Because I'm sure everyone constructing has an approved plan somewhere.
Are you sure about that?
It's supposed to be.
Well, I can't say I'm sure. I don't know. But what happens is, yes, many people do follow. And if variations happen during construction, there is the opportunity to actually indicate this just before you get an occupation permit.
Oh, okay.
There is what we call an occupation permit. That again, I'll go back to Mark too. I mean, he's a KCCA guy. But basically, it's that permit where you've built your house, it's done, and then the authorities have to come back and approve that your building is now worth living and you living in, and you submit as built drawings. So in case of any changes from the approved to the, hopefully they're not massive, because if it's going to be a massive change, that requires you to resubmit.
Oh, okay.
To resubmit, yes. Okay. But if there's, oh, I just left out this wall, I moved this wall, things like those, I think it is facilitated in the as-built drawings. He will confirm. That's what I know. Right? Yeah. The thing about you had another question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the question was people following the approved plans.
No, I wanted to, yes, I just answered that. That's my take. I hope you'll give his. I wanted to add a little something on what Mark said, that despite the fact that the law recognizes the client as the one applying, and the professional might decide to do it for you, it still happens in scenarios where the professional requests you to take it on. Because as professionals, we face a lot of challenges still with the authorities, whereby the client ends up taking it up on the professional as the issue for the approvals not happening. We are facing this challenge a lot. So there'll be scenarios where the client will have to handle. Okay. However, there are also the scenarios where the professional says, oh, it's okay, I will go ahead and do it on your behalf. Yes.
Okay, our time is spent, and I know Mark will be calling you back to give us details on all the permits that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's been quite an interesting journey, learning about the art and science of architecture.
Yes.
It's very beautiful to know, but I encourage our viewers and everyone watching to always use professionals when it comes to building, when it comes to designing spaces, when it comes to construction especially, because the repercussions are very, very hazardous, as in they are terrible. It could end up in death. We've seen buildings collapse because we never use the right people. From Catherine and the rest of the guests tonight, see you next time. Keep watching the Property Lane. Follow us on Twitter, on YouTube, and all the social media platforms. Bye-bye.